Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show, everyone. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Everyone, hey, welcome into the program. So today on the show, we have another round of computer and technology news, a lot of updates to stories that we have done in the recent past. I'm actually finding a couple stories about Cellebrite, which I'm really looking forward to getting into, because if you don't recall, Cellebrite and that whole debacle where Cellebrite was, trying to hack into iPhones and, pretty much anything encrypted for law enforcement and things like that. And then Signal, who is an end-to-end encryption messaging platform, the CEO decided to, hack into them. And if I'm recalling correctly, it's that they found a piece of hardware that quote-unquote fell off the back of a truck, which is normally kept within their lab in Israel. And he was able to get on their hardware, and turns out that the software that they're using, because again it is meant to be used behind the scenes, it's not public facing or anything like that, was actually pretty poorly designed when you have security concerns. And so with that being said, it's there's some updates about the owner of Cellebrite. I should say that Cellebrite is confronting what it is that Signal did, and then of course there's already one particular case that is looking to be overturned due to the credibility issues that this hack to Cellebrite can pose. We have that issue. We have ADT suing Ring for using blue octagons. Who knew? That was, Octagon. Yeah, blue octagons. You have Nevada backpedaling on tech companies starting local governments, because, if tech companies aren't big enough, well, the thing that you should probably do is give them the right to form their own little, cities. Now, with that being said, we have that and a ton more that we can talk about here. Everyone, just stay tuned. And of course, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, all the shows. You can find the podcast. You can find all that and more. Everyone, computeramerica.com. Now, with that being said, also be sure to follow us on social media, twitch.tv/computeramerica, all that. And I think that's about all that I need to kind of mention for the morning announcements. So everyone, let's go ahead, get into computer and technology news. Sit back and relax. Here we go. So I think that for our first story that we're going to do is going to be about some legislation. Yeah, that's always a good way to wet people's whistles. And this first story comes to us from Ars Technica, Mr. Timothy Lee. And this one's going to be pretty cool because, the same thing we're seeing when it comes to technology in cars, where, at first you get it in like the super high-end models, and then it trickles down to, kind of the higher-end models, and then eventually every single car has it, such as, things like anti-lock brakes, such as... I don't know, I'm sure rear view cameras is a pretty big one in modern cars. Things like that just kind of make sense and make operating a vehicle more safe. So you get this particular story that, it's much in the same way that it's already being used in certain high-end cars. It could become standard in all cars in the near future. And according to the legislation, you're looking at about 2027. Just like seatbelts became mandatory, just like anti-lock brakes become mandatory, just like, so many things become mandatory in cars. It looks like driver monitoring technology. So that has taken a couple of forms, and obviously we've talked about Tesla in the recent past, which, Tesla has their own thing with the Autopilot crash and how they are now claiming something different, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But Tesla does it by making sure that you grip the wheel every so often. Other car companies are doing it by, they have a camera pointed at you, and if you don't make, kind of, not eye contact, but if your eyes are not staying to the road, often enough, then it will send you alerts. Many car companies have their own forms of driver monitoring, and it looks like it may become standard. I'm wondering which one actually does. Now, with that being said, they say that the legislation, safety advocates have argued that any car with an advanced driver assistance system should have a driver monitoring system, and that's to combat the risk of drivers will start to trust their ADAS so much that they stop paying attention to the road, which complacency happens all the time. That's why you drive nowadays, even before cars could almost drive themselves. Before cars could drive themselves 80% of the time, you had people who would, put on makeup and drink coffee and talk on a cell phone, text on a cell phone, who would, do all these crazy things except pay attention to the road, even though they're driving 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 pound death machines. If you do it often enough, you're just going to become complacent, and that's only going to get worse when, like I said, the car can nearly drive itself. So expect a lot more stories like that. Now, with that being said, they said that this would extend beyond anything like Tesla, and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration estimates that distracted driving is responsible for about 3,000 deaths per year. Obviously, you want to bring that number very, very much down. And, and that's kind of the important part here, is that the technology to do this, think about it, it's just a camera with some, with some AI in it, with some programming that will say that, we haven't seen the eyes facing forward in the past, 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds. Send an alert to the dashboard saying, hey, pay attention to the road. Little things like that. It's not that complicated. That is of course the cost of developing it, but then that's just the cost of a webcam and, kind of a little bit more software in the computer. And there you go, 3,000 deaths a year prevented. And of course, not just for the driver, but the people they unwittingly hit or injure. They say that the Markey-Blumenthal bill, which is co-sponsored by Amy Klobuchar, would require the Secretary of Transportation to draft rules requiring all vehicles to have driver monitoring technology installed. The final version of the rule would be ready within 4 years, and it would give automakers another 2 to comply. If the legislation passed this year, every new car would need to adopt some version of the technology in 2027. Now, obviously, all 3 senators are members of the House Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. Weird thing to kind of group together. But anyways, they say that, obviously some people would consider this to be too much, but I'm kind of curious what people are thinking on this. They're saying that, again, the article continues, requiring distracted driving safety measures for all vehicles might seem like a drastic step. However, ADAS will only become more popular and more capable over the next 6 years. So many, perhaps even most vehicles are likely to have some kind of ADAS by 2027, and cars in 2027 will likely handle even more of the driving tasks that we, kind of take for granted today. That will make it even more challenging for drivers to pay attention while the car does most of the driving. Because, again, the car can do most of the driving, and today it may be 50% of the driving, including highway driving. In 2 years, it may be 60%, 70%. Be able to park itself, may be able to drop you off at the front and then go find a parking space all by itself. In a couple of more years, it may be able to handle city streets and pull itself in and out of the driveway, and then you just start kind of puzzling the pieces together. And other than let's say inclement weather or anything like that, 90% of the driving will be handled by cars in most situations. So, but that 10% is going to matter. That the few times that you need to take over the car, that's going to be the important part. And that's where distracted driving measures would kind of step in and make sure that people are ready to do that. European officials have been more aggressive than their American counterparts about requiring driver monitoring. One auto industry expert based in the UK told Ars that recently enacted European rules require driver monitoring systems in all new car models introduced from mid-2024 and onwards. Obviously, these things, it would not take effect, but there's a 2-year grace period, and by 2026, it should happen. So, essentially, America's trying to play catch-up to Europe, and the thing about Europe is that the European Union, no individual country within that union is as big a market as the United States, or even China for that matter. But when they group together, they are as big or bigger than the U.S. market when it comes to consumer, products and things like that. And the way that the European Union is, they kind of draft their rules. It's so much that if a company wants to operate in Europe, which they obviously would want to do, such as a car company, they have to comply with those rules everywhere that they do business. So not even in Europe. If Ford decides that they want to sell driving assisted vehicles in Europe that comply with European rules, but then they say it's a little more lax in America, we don't have to do that. No, they would be blocked from doing trade in the EU, and they would have to sell the same quality of car in China, in India, in America, in South America, in all countries, because of the way they're set up. So that's why we make such a big deal about rules and regulations and laws in the EU, is because they can drag American corporations and really the American consumer, kind of measures much more aggressively than America can. So we're going to wrap that up there. So one thing I want to say, let's see, they have some of the comments here saying, okay, but is there anything in the legislation that protects driver information? I'd guess it's easy to extend anything remotely, like face recognition, to handle things like interest, emotional state, etc. And all that coupled with location and driving information seems like a steak too juicy for internet marketing firms to resist. In fact, how about some legislation that forces manufacturers to keep any and all personal information in the car only without a court order? So one thing I want to address, and the author also addressed this as well, but and they actually do mention privacy. The rule issued under the paragraph shall incorporate appropriate privacy and data protection safeguards as determined by the Secretary of Transportation. Essentially, it should be able to, it should attempt to detect driver distraction, driver disengagement, automation complacency by drivers, and foreseeable misuse of advanced driver assist systems. So with that being said, there's already data protection rules on the book, and they're getting more and more so. There were, of course, a couple of years ago, everything that happened in Europe, but I think that there's going to be all this legislation. Let's see, I think it's here with Apple. Essentially, what Apple is doing with mobile devices is going to apply to cars as well. So when people say, what about all the information that is being tracked? And I think by, in 5 or 6 years, that fight is either going to be over. It's either going to be won or lost, and the fight's going to be over. The amount and type of data protection that consumers have is either going to be, pseudo-private, and companies can use any information that they gather from any source, and it's up to them to really determine how best to use it, or the data protection is going to be in place, and driving habits, that video, stuff like that, the information picked up from that would not be spread to any other company or packaged and sold. Again, I feel like that fight's going to be over one way or another in 5 years, but that data is going to be uploaded and shared at least internally. It makes no sense to have connected cars and not have them share information with one another, to be able to learn and really figure out that this is what distracting driving looks like. This is what happened. These are the traits that happen before a wreck. Artificial intelligence is going to want that information, those videos of take all of those 3,000 fatal car crashes, run them through a system, and you're going to have build, and you're going to be able to pick up what it looks like the seconds or minutes before a fatal car accident happens. And you can kind of let the driver know that, hey, you are displaying symptoms of sleepiness, of impairment, don't drive, pull over, the car's going to pull over, send something out to help the driver. That information is going to be shared internally or externally. And by 2027, it's going to be up to the intervening years to determine which way that's going to go. But yep, proposed legislation. Other countries are already looking at a little bit more aggressive, 2026, but by 2027, expect all cars to have assisted driving systems. It's just going to happen. So thought we'd give you a little heads up. Okay, story number one. Story number two. Sorry, I definitely went on a tangent there, but it was a lot of fun. Okay, so that's story number one. Story number two. We can go ahead and, because it flows oh so nicely, we can get a little bit of an update from Tesla about what happened in that car accident. If you don't recall, 2 gentlemen were killed in a Tesla car accident when it wrapped itself around a tree. They claim that the first responders claim it was an autopilot crash because there was no one in the driver's seat. No one in the driver's seat is very confusing to a lot of people because, hey, you can't activate Tesla Autopilot without activating that whole thing. So, you can't activate Autopilot without being in the driver's seat. So what happened, they claim that, it's pretty easy, honestly, for people to trick this whole thing. And Tesla keeps pushing back saying, no, that's not at all what happened. So Tesla claims driver was behind the wheel of unexplained autopilot crash. And of course, the police are going to dispute it completely. So here we have it, and we're actually going to use this source instead. Perfect. Actually, yeah, here we go. So this one from Yahoo Finance, and Tesla executives have claimed that there was a driver behind the wheel when one of the company's cars was involved in a crash that killed 2 men. This would be an ordinary assumption for other cars, but obviously the Tesla Model S had autopilot capabilities. And the police were 100% certain that no one was in the driver's seat, Herman told a Houston radio station. According to the Washington Post, one of the victims was found in the passenger seat while the other was in the back seat. Clearly, due to crime scene forensics, you can tell pretty easily, oh, check it out. There's a not exploded person in the driver's seat, but there are exploded people in the passenger and back seat. So yeah, it's pretty easy to put two and two together there. However, officials have not yet said whether Tesla's autopilots or full self-driving systems were in use at the time of the crash, although Elon Musk has denied it was. The car apparently veered off the road, hit a tree, and burst into flames, which had made it difficult for authorities or Tesla to recover SD card data, so essentially the black box. Tesla apparently did a study with U.S. automotive authorities over the past week, saying our adaptive cruise control only engaged when a driver was buckled in about 5 miles per hour. It only accelerated to 30 miles per hour with the distance before the car crashed. He added that the steering wheel was deformed and that all seatbelts post-crash were found to be unbuckled, saying that data logs recovered from data logs recovered so far show Autopilot was not enabled and this car did not purchase full self-driving. Moreover, standard Autopilot would require lane lines to turn on, which this street did not have. Unfortunately for Mr. Musk, a recent test from Consumer Reports found that a half-mile closed test track, a Model Y could be tricked into driving along painted lines with nobody in the driver's seat, saying that Tesla is falling behind other automakers, and the National Highway Safety Administration has also investigated 28 Tesla crashes. 23 were believed to be parts of Autopilot. And that makes perfect sense to me, that so many of these crashes would have Autopilot kind of issues associated with them, because I mean, let's just take it, step by step. 28 crashes is not that many crashes compared to how many cars that they're sending out. I'm sure that other car companies have similar or worse records than Tesla does. But Tesla is packed so full of technology that if a driver is completely functional, not impaired, paying attention to the road, and has all the tools at their disposal that Tesla offers, yeah, I feel like the crashes are going to be few and far between, but the ones that do slip through are going to be heavily reliant on the car, because, hey, a person would be able to drive a Tesla better than most other cars. So 23 out of 28 having Autopilot use associated with them. I feel like Autopilot being on is when people get really lax and they get really, they kind of ignore other things that are happening. So that makes perfect sense. And they mentioned that in the call, Mr. Musk criticized extremely deceptive media practices for what he claims are false reports. Tesla, which has disbanded its press office, did not respond to a request for comment from the Independent before the time of publication. And yeah, I got to say that Tesla can't really complain too much when they throw out their press department and they rely on their CEO throwing out tweets to dispute or, clear things up. Clearly, the fire that happened due to all the lithium batteries that needed, it was something like 300,000 gallons of water to keep under control. That made headlines, and then just the back and forth between what, police would claim, and that's really the thing here. Blame the media, it's fun, all that good stuff, but it's the media and the police reports and kind of reports of the crime scene, or not really crime scene, the incident scene, that first responders and everyone else is corroborating. And it's up to Apple to it's up to Elon Musk to say, no, it's not the way it looks, when everyone else is saying, here's how it looks. It's very, very difficult to, kind of get out ahead of that. But here we are. So good luck with that, Elon. Not the easiest thing to do. I honestly think that someone was, kind of trying to show off and tricking the Autopilot, at least to some degree. But what actually happened, we may never really know, because it, pretty easy to burn up memory in a fire like that. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about, how about we do, let's see. All right, here's a little tidbit for everyone who does not live in Florida, because, hey, Florida, it's where you send up rockets, all good stuff. Saying that there's a new law, or at least a bill that's headed to the governor's desk to sign into law, saying that Floridians must, wrong screen there. There we go, perfect. Floridians must call police for found rocket debris. How often that's going to happen? Who knows? You could be hit with a $1,000 fine, and then, of course, plus restitution to the owner of the part. So I don't know if you know a lot about rockets, but they're pretty expensive. So if you happen to find yourself a nice polished nose cone, I don't know if SpaceX would actually make you pay for the nose cone, but yeah, turns out that if any rocket parts fall into your yard, call the police or else. They're saying that if you find an object that reasonably looks like a space part on your lawn and don't report it to police, you could be subject to a new first-degree misdemeanor and up to a $1,000 fine plus restitution to the owner of the part. It sounds so crazy that, potentially that space part could fall, maybe not in your yard, but on your house or on your head. And this is it sounds like something that could potentially kill you. And you know what? No, they're going to fine you instead. Oh my goodness. It almost sounds like, sometimes bullets are going to, fly into your wall. And if you don't report those bullets to us and give them back to us, then, we're going to hit you with a fine. It sounds so crazy. It can only be Florida. So, with that being said, they said that the bill is now heading to the governor's desk with backing by SpaceX. The company has been launching from Cape Canaveral for years. On Friday, its Falcon 9 rocket carried 4 astronauts to NASA's Kennedy Space Center to the International Space Station. So, although NASA rockets and shuttles have been blasting off from Florida for decades, the changing nature of spaceflight has made it more important to recover fallen parts. And because SpaceX is reusing rocket parts, I guess that's the big difference here, they can reuse the parts. It becomes much more, and honestly, what I honestly think this is, after doing that story the other day about how there were Chinese spies in the waters when SpaceX first tried to land their first rocket on that floating barge. I think this is to prevent people from finding rocket parts, selling them, and selling trade secrets to either competing companies or competing nations. I feel like this is more of a half state secret, half corporate secrets, and to prevent corporate espionage more so than it is random lady finding a SpaceX part and hanging it on her wall. Less about thievery, or less about random knickknacks and more about protecting secrets. So they said that SpaceX lobbyist Jeff Sharkey told a House committee last month that the company feared losing intellectual property to China. Hey, didn't even read that. I should probably read these articles before I start running my mouth off. But yeah, exactly what I just said. They said that this bill, which seems trivial, is extremely important. They're saying that in my district, when the Challenger was lost, pieces of the orbiter were washed up on our beaches. And he also pointed out the case last year where a fisherman reeling in 2 red parachutes and a hatch door used by SpaceX 32 miles off the coast of Daytona Beach. And of course, the fisherman reported to SpaceX. So with that being said, the article goes on for a bit, but ultimately he said the bill was about making Florida more hospitable to aerospace companies, and he didn't see many Floridians being subject to the new law. It seems like a really rare thing that it would even come up. But if it does come up, they want something on the books that it's going to happen. The way that rocket launches happen off of Florida is that they take off from Cape Canaveral, they fly over the Gulf of Mexico, and really it's very minimal that rockets kind of take space, airtime over land in overpopulated areas. So the odds of this happening in the first place are pretty slim to none. And then, the few times that it has happened, they want to make sure that they have something on the books to, account for that, because more and more spaceflight is going to happen. More rockets, more chance for failure. Yeah, that whole thing. So, with that being said, we can go ahead and continue on here to story number 4. And let's see. I'm kind of over Elon Musk related news. There's a lot of it out there for him having disbanded his press arm. Let's see. Okay, we can talk about Cellebrite real quick. The meat of the show, I would say. Cellebrite. Again, if you don't recall, they're a digital security firm and a forensic hacking firm in Israel who make and distribute software to crack into iPhones, to crack into Android phones, essentially anything encrypted that law enforcement wants to get into. They can't ask, they cannot force Apple to turn over passwords. They can't force the owner of the device to break, essentially let them into their own device thanks to the Fifth Amendment. So they go to these third-party companies and buy hacking services and vulnerabilities, which I guess law enforcement is welcome to do every day of the week. Now, Cellebrite, a well-known provider of phone unlocking and hacking technology for law enforcement agencies, pushed an update to its products less than a week after the CEO of Signal claimed to have hacked one of the company's products. And again, the company was never really supposed to have any kind of products out there for people to hack. They say that Moxie Marlinspike, the founder of the popular encrypted messaging app Signal, explained that he had obtained and found a device that industry standard exploit mitigation defenses are missing, and many opportunities for exploitation are present. He was able to essentially execute code from anywhere and do anything on the device, including untraceably and untrackably change, edit, and kind of render the data that it provides, including photos or things like that, or communication logs, anything. He could remotely, with very, very simple commands, change all of that data, and no one would be the wiser. And the problem with that is that when you are providing evidence to big cases and law firms that where everything has to be completely concrete and perfectly evident, which we're going to find out in the next story here in just a moment, that's a really big issue because it calls into credibility anything that ever came out of Cellebrite. Do I think it actually happened before this? Probably not, but there is that 1% doubt of, hey, maybe someone had hacked the hackers, which happens really all the time. So on Monday, Cellebrite pushed an update to its customers. A source who works in the forensic industry provided Motherboard with a copy of the Cellebrite announcement. Motherboard granted the source, allowed them to be anonymous to protect them from retaliation from Cellebrite. They obtained multiple copies of the announcement so you know that it's real. Because again, this is not consumer facing. This is law enforcement, this is government agencies all over the world. This is Cellebrite's customers are not meant to distribute this this kind of information. So, they said that 2 new version updates have been released to address a recently identified security vulnerability. The security patch strengthens the protections of these solutions. Great way to word, our stuff sucked. Now, hopefully, it sucks less. Cellebrite has limited what products can perform a logical iOS extraction. Mobile forensics products typically perform logical and physical extractions, with the former being the simpler of the two. Saying that as part of the update, the advanced logical iOS extraction flow is now available in Cellebrite UFED only. And by the way, the article actually mentions, do you work for Cellebrite? Are you a customer? They want more information. So yeah, right there in the middle of the article, they're looking for people to talk. So the announcement did not specifically say, there we go, whether the addressed vulnerability is one of the same that was disclosed by Marlinspike. It does add that based on our reviews, we have not found any instance of this vulnerability being exploited in real-life usage of our solutions. Again, that also doesn't really mean much because the founder of Signal proved that he can change things without ever leaving a trace. Like, it changes it at the most basic level of the report. Like, he can change it as the report is being generated. That's the issue. So, a Cellebrite customer who asked to also remain anonymous, as they were not allowed to speak to the press, said that they believe these updates were to address the vulnerabilities found by Marlinspike. And yeah, here we go. It appears to be an attempt to minimize the attack surface, not to fix it. Essentially, the changes that they were executing and the vulnerabilities that they found, they reduced the attack surface as they mentioned, because now not everything can do everything. Only certain things can do it, and I'm sure that the device that he was playing with to find the vulnerabilities can no longer use at least what he had found. So, with that being said, most law enforcement they have a CEO of forensic firm Garrett Discovery told Motherboard that most law enforcement have IT administrators that monitor and work on computers within the forensic lab, and based on these types of attacks, they should reconsider their network architecture to avoid someone taking total control of their network. The entire ecosystem of digital forensic tools is built on eggshells. I think what they mean by that is, when you build stuff like this, you want it to do what it was designed to do. And even though they work in security and, hacking things and digital forensics and stuff like that, the software itself doesn't really need to be that secure. So they believe it doesn't need to be that secure because, hey, it's not something that consumers are using. It's not something that's protecting anything. In fact, it is breaking through protection. So why would it itself need protection? That's just a waste of time, energy, development. Copy and paste a couple of things, do the bare minimum, and not really pay attention to the defense of the defense breaking software. I feel like that's what he's talking about. As long as it works, then who really cares about the output? Let's see. So with that being said, yep. I think that's about where we can leave it there, though I do want to have one more little update to that, which is, I believe, this one. Yes. Lawyers are already jumping on this. And if I know one thing about lawyers, it's that they can't wait to take advantage of a story like this. This is by Motherboard as well, and Joseph Cox, saying that lawyer asks for new trial after Cellebrite vulnerability discovery, saying that the move comes after the founder of Signal and everything that we just talked about. So let's see. And by the way, this is just going to be one. I'm sure that any lawyer who finds himself working on a case related to any information gotten from Cellebrite is going to be asking for the exact same thing. But they mentioned that, let's see, so, quote, this honorable court should vacate said guilty, find, and order a new trial for the reasons contained in the instant motion. The motion for a new trial written by the lawyer reads, and he says that he shared a copy of the motion with Motherboard. The motion revolves around the conviction of a robbery case in March, and they're saying that they redacted the case number and the name of the defendant from the copy shared with Motherboard, saying that the Cellebrite evidence was heavily relied upon by the state in its argument and was crucial to its case. Since the trial, severe defects have been uncovered with the Cellebrite devices, pointing to the findings from Signal. So there you go. In essence, internal security on Cellebrite devices is so poor that any device that is examined may in turn corrupt the Cellebrite devices and affect all past and future reports. which is exactly what the founder of Signal had found. So they mentioned that the motion concludes saying that a new trial should be ordered so that the defense can examine the report generated by Cellebrite device and examine the hardware itself. Obviously, Cellebrite did not respond to comment, but yeah, this is going to be pretty standard. I think that if they really dug down into it, the majority, if not 100% of the reports generated by Cellebrite are going to be, perfectly fine. No discrepancies, and if there are discrepancies, it's going to be human error. But this gives lawyers a little bit of ground to stand on that they can, work through the machinations and potentially have something overturned. So, yep, this seems pretty standard, and you can expect a lot more of this to happen in the near future. So, bad time to be a Cellebrite. Who knew? Okay, so there's that story number 5. Story number 6. Let's go ahead and talk about this one. This one seems pretty cool. I love deepfakes are something that worry a lot of people, and probably rightfully so, because humans are so easily tricked. But at the same time, it's something that it's a technology that's causing problem, but it's also something that technology can fix at the same time. But humans are going to be fooled either way. Think of it like magic, except instead of a magician deceiving you, it's technology. Now, with that being said, looks like the military may have some challenges. And you see an image here on my screen. Joseph Fingus from Engadget is put together this article, and it's pretty cool, saying it's well established that deepfake images of people are problematic, but it's now clear that bogus satellite imagery could also represent a threat. And The Verge reports that University of Washington-led research had developed a way to generate deepfake satellite photography as part of an effort to detect manipulated images. And yeah, you could definitely see that here in this image. This image does not actually exist. They said that the team used AI algorithm to generate deepfakes by feeding the traits of learned satellite images into different base maps. They could use Tacoma's roads and building locations, for example, which is at the top of the picture below. And, you may see that when you, kind of go through your driving apps or your, Google Earth or, Google Maps or something like that, or Apple Maps or any other kind of driving app, you can switch from satellite view, which is literally images of satellites superimposed over the map, or you could do, kind of not satellite view, where it's the city reporting and digitizing their map, saying that this is the highway, this is the road, this is where a building should be. Essentially no level of detail, big blocky images, but essentially the same information. Just and really, if anything, the satellite image is just laid over and matched to the map that is provided to them. So, with that being said, they said that they used Tacoma's roads and building locations, as I said before, at the top of the picture, but superimposed Beijing's taller buildings, which is in the bottom right of this, and of course you can apply greenery. And while the execution is not flawless, it's close enough that scientists believe you might blame any oddities on low image quality, which is why you get this example of what looks like New York City superimposed on like a cul-de-sac. Like it's a really weird image. A lead author was quick to note that there could be positive uses for deepfake satellite snapshots. You could simulate locations from the past to help understand climate change, study urban sprawl, or predict how a region will evolve by filling in blanks. However, there's little doubt that AI-created fakes could be used for misinformation. A hostile country could send falsified images to mislead military strategists. They might not notice a missing building or bridge that could be a valuable target. Fakes could also be used for political aims, such as hiding evidence of atrocities or suppressing climate science. Now, the researchers hope that this work will help develop a system to catch satellite deepfakes in the same way that early work exists to spot human-oriented fakes. So with that being said, obviously, John Finkus is pointing out that, it's a race against time, but this is going to be true of any situation that you have a lot of images and you can train an AI to generate them on demand. Obviously, there are a lot of satellite images. There are a lot of images of people. There are a lot of images of animals and scenery and anything like this. The university, great for them for doing the work. Perfect. But this kind of approach could be applied to anything that has any measurable amount of images. And of course, then you can play with them in any way that you wanted to. It's not really groundbreaking. Again, it's simply going from humans to scenery, which, you need to match up different things and you need to be able to, kind of work out the differences between satellite images and people, but you're still looking for, similar applicable things that you can tweak. It's not too far-fetched to think that this is usable already, and it's only going to get better. It's not a bad thing, but I'm also hoping that technology can spot them before it becomes a super bad thing. So there you have it. Not hard at all. There you go. Okay, so that was story number 6, story number 7, and we're quickly running out of time, but you know what? This has been fun so far. Let's talk about... All right, here's a story that I didn't really cover and looks like now is getting an explanation, and I would love one. The Pentagon. You know them. They do things with the military. Well, Pentagon explains odd transfer of 175 million IP addresses to obscure company. And they said that something weird happened minutes before Trump left. US says it was security research. So here we go. The US Department of Defense puzzled internet experts by apparently transferring control of tens of millions of dormant IP addresses to an obscure Florida company just before the president left the White House. But the Pentagon was finally offered a partial explanation for why it happened, saying that the Defense Department says it still owns the addresses, but that it is using a third-party company in a pilot project to conduct security research. It seems like, as far as government oversight goes, being able to start third-party companies and move all your research into them is a great way to avoid any kind of oversight. But yeah, who knows? Literally 3 minutes before Joe Biden became president, a company called Global Resource Systems LLC discreetly announced to the world's computer networks a startling development. It now was managing a huge unused swath of the internet that for several decades had been owned by the US military. Again, the number of Pentagon-owned IP addresses announced by the company rose to 56 million by late January, and by April it had become 175 million IP addresses. By the way, that makes it the world's largest announcer of IP addresses in the IPv4 global routing table. Remember, we had to switch over to IPv6 because we were quickly running out of available IPv4 addresses. Still a good move. I'm not saying that it's the military's fault that we had to switch over. We were going to run out one way or another, but those addresses are still pretty darn valuable, considering they can, a lot of older technology still needs addressable IPv4 addresses. So, still, they said that the theories were many. Did someone at the Defense Department sell off a vast chunk of military's of the military's vast collection of sought-after IP addresses as Trump left office, had the Pentagon finally acted on demands to unload the billions of dollars worth of IP addresses that the military has been sitting on for decades. And according to that, the Department of Defense wrote on Friday that Brett Goldstein, the DDS's, which is the Defense Department, said in a statement that his unit had authorized a pilot effort publicizing the IP space owned by the Pentagon, saying, quote, "This pilot will assess, evaluate, and prevent unauthorized use of Department of Defense IP address space. Additionally, this pilot may identify potential vulnerabilities." Goldstein described the project as one of the Defense Department's many efforts focused on continually improving our cyber posture and defense in response to advanced persistent threats. We are partnering through DoD to ensure potential vulnerabilities are mitigated. So, it sounds like, we did it for security reasons. What those are, who the heck knows? They said that the 6-year-old DDS consists of 82 engineers, data scientists, and computer scientists who worked on the much publicized Hack the Pentagon program and a variety of other projects tackling some of the hardest technology problems faced by the military. And Goldstein has called the unit a SWAT team of nerds. So, the best nerds that you can assemble in one room. Still, the government's explanation piqued the interest of Doug Midori, director of internet analysis at network security company Kentech, saying that I interpret this to mean that the objectives of the effort are twofold. First, to announce this address space to scare off any would-be squatters, and second, to collect a massive amount of background internet traffic for threat intelligence. So, I guess being the owner of, 175 million addresses, if anyone were to try to use those channels, this private company could collect any communications that, it were being used. And obviously, the massive amount of unassigned IP addresses would be very attractive to, to certain companies or ne'er-do-wells because, hey, it is the largest collection of unused IP addresses that people can assign to. But the military is essentially saying here, anyone who uses these are going to be monitored 100%. And yeah, you don't want to be caught in that net. And anyone who does, you only have yourself to blame. Now, with that being said, the new company, we really don't know all that much about it. The company did not return phone calls or emails from the Associated Press. It has no web presence, though it has the domain grscorp.com. Its name doesn't appear on the directory of its Plantation, Florida domicile, and a receptionist drew a blank when an AP reporter asked for a company representative at the office earlier this month. She found its name on a tenant list and suggested trying email. Records show that the company has not obtained a business license in Plantation. Essentially, physically, this company is not there. The government is doing business with it, but as far as the business itself, does it really exist? Not so much. Now, the AP did find out that the Defense Department still owns the IP addresses, saying that a Defense Department spokesperson told AP on Saturday that none of the newly announced space had been sold. So there you go. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that we should really pay attention here. Let's see. So they mentioned that the network experts were stumped by the emergence of the global resource system for a while, and they said it was a great mystery. Let's see. So they're saying that this amount of available IP addresses is bigger than a China Telecom and Comcast. It is huge. They said that they now announced 61 million more IP addresses than the now second biggest AS in the world, China Telecom, and over 100 million more addresses than Comcast, the largest residential internet provider in the US. Essentially, the US government, the Pentagon, has more IP space available than the Chinese telecom, than China Telecom and Comcast combined. It's huge. This is a huge chunk of IP addresses. In fact, they're announcing so much IPv4 space that 5.7% of the entire global routing table originated by AS 8003. In other words, 1 out of every 20 IPv4 addresses is presently originated by an entity that did not even appear on the routing table at the beginning of the year. Essentially, the US government, well, now we know the extent of it, but yeah, 1 in every 20 IPv4 addresses. And remember, up until a couple of years ago, this ran every webcam, every cell phone, every computer, every router, every home, everything. 1 in 20 was owned by the US government. It's pretty crazy. So, and obviously that's going to help future-proof, the IPv4 squish, or I guess kind of the lack of available addresses was never really a problem for the military. So I guess that's a good thing. Yep, I think that's about as far as we're going to take that one, but there you go. Mystery kind of solved. They're trying to be more secure, I guess. Who knows? But yeah. I think that's about all we're actually going to find out about that. Let's see. We have time for 1, maybe 2 for quick. Okay. I mentioned this one at the top of the hour, so I should probably mention it. This one from Engadget. And in terms of pettiness, although, it is a trademark, and the way trademarks work, I don't know if people really understand this. If you don't defend your patent, if you don't defend your trademark, then you lose it. So people are wondering, it's like, I can't believe, X company did that when Y company was, either doing parody or, wasn't really infringing that much. If they have the rights to something, they have to defend it in court. Because if they choose to defend it here or not defend it there, then they lose the right to it altogether. They can't selectively enforce their patents. So I think that's why you have situations such as this one where ADT, the home security system, they're suing Ring for using the blue octagon sign to promote the Ring alarm outdoor siren. And you can see right here, here's a comparison of the two signs. Let's see, we can open image in a new tab, easy, scroll all the way in, and yep, blue octagon, white rim all the way around it. Admittedly, the colors are a little bit different. Ring is a little bit lighter shade of blue than ADT, but at that point, we're just talking about semantics. So ADT in big prominent letters, Ring in big prominent letters. Yeah, one could definitely see the similarities. So with that being said, in the complaint, it filed accusing the Amazon-owned company of willful trademark infringement and unfair competition. ADT wrote that using a similar looking sign, people will believe that Ring is providing a security service on par with ADT, or worse, that Ring is providing a security service in partnership with ADT. Burn. The apparently Ring signed an agreement not to use trademarks or names that may confuse it with ADT in 2016, but it started offering a blue octagon yard sign that says protected by Ring a few months later. After ADT reached out to Ring, the latter agreed to make the sign less blue, and they backed down and didn't take any more action until the newer, bluer signs were, they emerged. The blueness of a sign. Here we are, folks. We are in the future. Now, they said that that's not the only time the two companies clashed. 2017, ADT accused Ring of stealing and using the platform it developed in the Ring Protection DIY home system. They settled in 2018, where Amazon purchased Ring for over $800 million. Amazon worked out the ADT prior to the acquisition, but now ADT is backed by Google, which recently invested $450 million into the company. So, I guess a proxy war, a shadow war between Amazon and Google once again, but Ring versus ADT. In all honesty, they have to protect their trademarks, their patents, all that good stuff. In my mind, why the heck did they do an octagon? If they had just done a circle, a square, a triangle, anything trapezoidal, if they had gone with anything else in geometry, I feel like this wouldn't even be a problem. But Ring had to go in with the octagon. Where do they get off? I don't know. So in terms of pettiness, there you have it. ADT sues Amazon Ring over that. So with that being said, we have a lot. So some of the articles we did not get to include, again, Nevada governor backpedals on plan to allow tech companies to form local governments. Great. They have other stories such as the next gen M2 Mac processor. So off of the M1 onto the M2 for Apple, and all that and more that we'll probably get to another day. But until then, everyone, thank you so much for tuning into the program. We'll catch you here next time, same place, Computer America. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tomorrow, we should have Scott Schober, our cybersecurity expert, a lot to talk about, and I'm looking forward to it. So until then, everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.